Right, you're again muted.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. Thank you.
Okay,
So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 13, Brahma stealing the boys and calves. Text 41. So I'll just do the translation by myself, purport, and then continue with the discussion. Text 41. Lord Brahma thought, whatever boys and calves there were in Gokula, I have kept them sleeping on the bed of my mystic potency. And to this very day, they have not yet risen again. Purport. For 1 year, Lord Brahma kept the calves and boys lying down in a cave by his mystic power. Therefore, when Brahma saw Lord Krishna still playing with all the cows and calves, he began trying to reason about what was happening. What is this? He thought. Maybe I took these calves and cowherd boys away, but now they have been taken from that cave. Is this what has happened? Has Krishna brought them back here? Then, however, Lord Brahma saw that the calves and boys he had taken were still in the same mystic Maya into which he had put them. Thus he concluded that the calves and cowherd boys now playing with Krishna were different from the ones in the cave. He could understand that although the original calves and boys were still in the cave where he had put them, Krishna had expanded himself. And so the present demonstration of calves and boys consisted of expansions of Krishna. They had the same features, the same mentality, and the same intentions, but they were all Krishna. Text 42. A similar number of boys and calves have been playing with Krishna for 1 whole year. Yet they are different from the ones illusioned by my mystic potency. This is Brahma speaking. Who are they? Where did they come from? Purport. Although appearing like calves, cows, and cowherd boys, these were all actually Vishnu. Actually, they were Vishnu Tattva, not Jiva Tattva. Brahma was surprised. The original cowherd boys and cows, he thought, are still where I put them last year. So who is it that is now keeping company with Krishna exactly as before? Where have they come from? Brahma was surprised that his mystic power had been neglected. Without touching the original cows and cowherd boys kept by Brahma, Krishna had created another assembly of calves and boys who were all expansions of Vishnu Tattva. Thus, Brahma's mystic power was superseded. So, I'd like to seek blessings of all assembled Vaishnavas, especially our Adi Purusha Prabhu, so that our discussion of Bhagavatam may be fruitful. So we're discussing Srimad Bhagavatam. This is your first time, John, right? And are you familiar with Srimad Bhagavatam at all? You don't know what Srimad Bhagavatam is? You've heard of Krishna? Okay. We're just reading Krishna. So basically, as you know, there's many names of divine. One of the names is, we addressed it, thank you, is God as Krishna. You can call the divine by any number of names. So Krishna, when he had his personal associates, and one of them was Brahma, who was the architect of the universe, he decided to play a prank on God by stealing all of his friends. This was when Krishna was younger. He had his friends, and Brahma, the chief architect, decided to play a prank on Krishna by just like Jesus was a shepherd, Krishna was a cowherd boy. So he decided to hide all of his cowherd friends and cows, and he went away to see how would God react. And then here it's being explained that Krishna then decided to expand himself into all those cowherd boys and cows that Krishna had hidden, exactly the same replica, more exact than even twins. So Brahma comes back and he becomes really confused. At first he comes back to that same spot, and then he sees all those cowherd boys exactly in the same motion, like the way he had left. Like, for example, if Krishna is feeding, his hand is stretched like this. One cowherd boy's hand is raised whatever position they were in, exactly the same position they're all in, exactly that same moment when Brahma comes back. And that is like a whole year passes by on earthly realm. So Brahma is really confused. Like it's almost like not even a second passed. Like, did I actually go back and come back? What's going on? Exact same scene. So then in this confusion, he goes to the cave, as we've been hearing for the past few classes. And he looks in that cave where he's hidden the coward boys, and they're all sleeping there. So he's thinking they look exactly the same. So who are these cowherd boys who are sleeping, and who are those? Then he thinks maybe did they just come back again and sleep? So he goes back again to that spot, and they're again still there. So he's really confused. He just goes back and forth, and he's completely bewildered. So this is the Brahma Vimohan Leela. The problem is now coming to head. Brahma is sort of prank. His prank out of his impudence is now coming to sort of conclusion. Brahma is getting really bewildered. So we hear the word bewildered. What does it exactly mean? Bewildered. Just such commonly used. Oh, I got bewildered. Any thoughts of what that bewilderment could mean? What does that mean? Like, yeah. So we, from our live audience, the answer is like we don't understand. That's good. That's one meaning of being bewildered. And I see some scratching and unmuting. Is someone trying to say?
I'm confused.
Confused, yeah. So that's the same thing as, confusion. So when we think of bewilderment, what is it that exactly gets bewildered? It's our intelligence that is getting bewildered. So intelligence is a sign of like rational cognitive faculty. That's through intelligence, we try to understand and size things up. And when our intelligence fails us, that is what is getting bewildered. So sometimes our intelligence can be our good friend, and other times our intelligence completely abandons us, much to our embarrassment. So it is this intelligence that is failing Brahma, and that is what we call as bewildered, as commonly as we might keep using the word bewildered. It's this failing intelligence. In fact, there's one nice story. Srila Prabhupada, the founder, the saint who came in the 60s, he established the Hare Krishna movement in the 60s. So there's one nice story regarding Srila Prabhupada where one of his disciples bought a new flip-flops, shoes, exactly like Prabhupada. I don't know if it's a flip-flop, shoes, let's say shoes. Exactly like he wanted the same shoes that Prabhupada had. So he bought a new pair of shoes, and he wanted Prabhupada to first use those shoes. So he noticed that every morning Prabhupada would go to his room. He would leave his shoes behind, close the door, and he would do whatever he needs to do in his room. And then after he comes back, Prabhupada would put on his shoes, go to the temple room, and again come back, leave his shoes behind, and go to his room. So this disciple had an intelligent idea, quote unquote, intelligent idea. He thought when Prabhupada leaves his shoes and goes inside his room, I'll swap my shoes for his. I'll take his shoes, I'll put my shoes. And the next time Prabhupada comes, he'll sort of step into those shoes. He'll go to the temple room, he'll come back, he'll use it. And then once he goes back to his room, I'll again switch it back. So then I'll put Prabhupada's shoes back, and I'll take those shoes which Prabhupada has used so that I can have his remnants, is something that is used, like a memorabilia or something like a merc, like a item that's Prabhupada has used. So as usual, he swapped the shoes, and now he has Prabhupada's shoes, and Prabhupada wears those shoes, and then he comes back and then takes those shoes inside Prabhupada, and he locks the door. Now this disciple is completely like, he didn't see that coming. He thought, okay, Prabhupada would leave his shoes behind, and then so Prabhupada took his shoes inside. So then he was wondering what to do. And then later Prabhupada sent a message through one of his servants to tell him that do not play pranks on your guru. So Prabhupada somehow by his mystical potency, he knew he's going to play a prank by swapping. It's just best is to just be straightforward, just to tell Prabhupada that, okay, can you use my shoe? I bought new pair of shoes. So like this, we see that don't play pranks on your guru. So Brahma is trying to play pranks on God, and his intelligence is getting bewildered. Because he's trying to size God up, because he sees God as this little boy, and how can God, we have our own conceptions of divinity, spirituality, and we have our own ideas. So in our material consciousness, we carry material vision, material concepts, and certain ideals. And so we carry those material vision in spiritual life. And then we try to size up God based on our limited understanding and our material intelligence. And then when God cannot fit into our concept of divinity, our little intelligence, then we try to dismiss whatever doesn't match up against our intelligence. So this is what Brahma is trying to do, that he's seeing Krishna, and that vision of Krishna is not matching against his intelligence. So to teach him a lesson, Krishna is trying to sort of make his intelligence fail, or what we call as bewilderment. So Brahma is he's being judgmental of God. In our modern colloquial terms, we don't like that word judgment. Oh, you're too judgmental attitude. So Brahma is trying to judge God by his material vision. But you see, judgment is also a product of intelligence. It's a sign of intelligence. So we judge something using, if you don't have intelligence, then how do you judge it against? So judgment comes from this, it's a product of intelligence. But the problem is, like we're discussing, if something doesn't match up against our limited intelligence, then it's like you're trying to filter something through the screen of your intelligence. If something can pass my exalted intelligence, that's good. If not, that thing has failed. That means your intelligence is greater than God, basically. If you can sort of understand God by your intelligence, then that means your intelligence is greater. So sometimes to teach us some lessons, when we enter spirituality, there are certain things that they're really hard to understand. Then how do you navigate those incongruous concepts, incoherent topics that's really hard to sort of put two and two together? It's really hard to understand certain things we were discussing yesterday I was discussing this yesterday with two fellow spiritualists, devotees, of how to sort of circumvent, how to navigate these apparent contradictions or whatever we see that we don't understand in spirituality. Because we have our intelligence and it's clearly not passing the test of our intelligence. So there's one essential component here that's missing sometimes, which really makes it hard for us to digest certain things. That essential component is the component of humility. And by humility, I mean humility has so many facets and so many aspects to it. But humility in this context means that we're trying to understand something through our own quote unquote exalted intelligence. And if we don't understand that, there's this aspect of humility which can kick in, saying that, okay, I don't understand it. That doesn't mean that thing is wrong. It just means that maybe I'm not able to understand it. Maybe I don't have sufficient intelligence to understand it. So that it could just mean that I don't have the sufficient intelligence. So that's one aspect of intelligence and humility. They can go well, they can work well together. You can have intelligence and you can also have humility, thinking that, okay, yes, I'm not able to understand it. Definitely something is wrong with my understanding. And it's not an easy stance to take. You read something in the scriptures, you're hearing something from some devotee and they're saying something and you don't understand. And the immediate tendency is to sort of dismiss them, or, oh, I think, are you sure? Can you state your reference? Or, all those things. And so there's this aspect of humility where one can think that, okay, I'm definitely missing something. It's true, but I'm not able to understand something like that. So, as we talk about renunciation, right? There's different types of renunciation. Renunciation is this quality of being really detached. One of the hallmark principles, along with humility, is renunciation, is really being detached and not being too attached and clingy to whatever we have. And there's different levels of renunciation. We can renounce our possessions. That is like easy, okay, when we get into spiritual life and we develop this detachment and can renounce our possession. And then there's renunciation of position. We might have certain self-image, certain self, I'm this way, I'm that way. And we want people to look as per what we think of ourselves. So we have to give up that also, renunciation of position. But then tougher than that is renunciation of our perspective or perception. So renunciation of possessions, position, and perspective, the 3 Ps. So the renunciation of our perspective, that's really hard. And that is what Brahma is struggling with. We have our certain vision and we try to size up pure devotees, we try to size up God. And it's so hard to give up our little conception of God. And when God doesn't fit our vision, then it's easy to sort of dismiss that and, okay, it works, but it's not for me. for whatever reasons we give, we try to dismiss spirituality because it's not passing our own exalted standards of right and wrong. Yes. Can I just finish it? Yeah, and then I'll just finish my train of thought, and then we can open the floor up for. So renunciation of our own perspective is really hard, and even among practicing devotees, it's easy to judge scriptures and guru based on we read something from scriptures, and many times some controversial topics come. I don't even need to mention certain controversial topics where people get caught up in those controversial topics and they just can't move past it. Why? Because they feel that topic has failed my intelligence, and then this process is not working, and their faith gets challenged. If something doesn't meet their intelligence, then their faith is sort of challenged, and because of loss of faith, then they leave the movement. So many people leave ISKCON due to apparent contradictions. And so Gaura Govinda Swami, it's His Holiness Gaura Govinda Swami, someone asked him once, and about controversies, and he's right away he sort of fired back, and he says, controversies in your head, all of that is in your head. There is actually no controversy at all. It's just in your head, and that's manifesting. So the universe actually has a mystic ability that the universe will shape up as per whatever you want it to be. If you're looking for garbage, you'll see only garbage all around. Like, has it happened to you that, let's say you're shopping for a bag or shoes, and then all you see is like shoes. You're at a bus stop, you see different shoes, or whatever you're shopping for, whatever in your consciousness, the universe will present that to you. If you have controversy in your consciousness, that is what you will see. Yes, then ISKCON is full of controversies and things that don't make sense and things like that. So it takes humility to sort of navigate around these issues. So renunciation of possessions, position, and perspective, right? And Brahma had all three. He had possessions. He was like the chief architect or the secondary creator of this universe. So he's the owner of the Brahma Loka. And then he also has position. He's like the chief progenitor. And then his perspective, he has the longest life. So think of his perspective. Our span of vision just lasts for during our lifespan. We may have heard things that have happened before in the history, decades before we were born or centuries. But Brahma's lifespan is so big, he can see from a big perspective. So because of his big perspective, Brahma was developing this pride. And his pride was blinding him from seeing the actual position of Krishna, the actual greatness of God, because of his pride. And pride can have this intoxicating quality to it. And just like an intoxicated person, it's so hard for them to see something. It's just blurry, and it's just hard for you to grasp anything. So when you're so intoxicated, when you're just so drunk in your own self-glory, it's just so hard to even recognize some exalted person is coming in front of you, or you're so intoxicated by our own position. So Brahma's pride is he's not able to see. For example, Satyavrata Muni in Damodarashtakam, he's beautifully glorifying all those apparent non-godly features in Krishna. And that is what makes him even more beautiful. And he's saying how fear personified runs away, from Krishna's, even fear personified runs away from Krishna. And that Krishna is scared of his mother. And he's saying such a beautiful sight. So that's not what Brahma is thinking. Brahma is not thinking such a beautiful sight. This little boy who is sort of sharing food, sometimes eating food from his left hand, and the food is dripping, and then he's licking his left hand. Like I was discussing in my previous discussion, that left hand is usually in Vedic culture reserved for certain not so clean activities, your bathroom activities, and right hand is used for some clean activities. So with his left hand, he's grabbing food, and some yogurt is dripping, and he's licking, and they're sharing food, half-eaten food, and things like that. And then I was sharing also that how sometimes he would give a rasgulla or a sweet to, like sometimes a cowherd boy would steal something from Krishna's tiffin, and before he would sort of tease Krishna and put it in his mouth. And then he would tease Krishna like, hey, hey. And then he has his mouth like this, and then Krishna's pop his mouth, and then the rasgulla would come flying into Krishna's mouth, and Krishna would be like, hey, hey, And then Brahma is seeing all this, he's completely bewildered, seeing this sight of Krishna. So his pride is blinding him from seeing Krishna's glories. So what happens is when we have this so-called position or this intelligence, then we can sometimes put more faith in that than in God or Krishna himself. So then we start depending too much on our own intelligence. That is why I see so many younger generation, especially men, unfortunately, I hate to bring this up, younger male devotees, so caught up with all these shastra and this and that and arguing. Like Ravindra Swami Prabhu would say, throwing shastra is like having a shastra snowball fight. Throwing a shloka at each other. You throw a shloka and that person throws a shloka back at you, and always arguing and always disturbed. And if you just go on Facebook and you see all these arguments based on Shastra. So sometimes we can have more faith in our own so-called intelligence. Then our faith is equally divided. Some amount of faith is in Krishna, some amount of faith is in our own rational faculty. So then when Krishna sees that, okay, we are too proud to see other things beyond our own perception, we're stuck in our own little perception, then Krishna, by his mercy, he smashes our intelligence, and that is what we call as bewilderment. And so Krishna snatches that faculty of intelligence, and Brahma is completely like humbled. So Krishna says, Yasyaham anugranami harishya dhanam shane tato dhanam tajat yasya swagana dukha dukkita. That out of my special compassion, sometimes I take away that which blinds you. Yasyaham anugranami harishya dhanam shane. I take away their possessions by which they're too proud, or they put more faith in that. By my mercy, I take that away from them. And then when they lose everything and then they become really humble, that's when they sort of put full faith in me. And that's what Kunti Maharani also is saying, that Krishna, you can only be approached by akinchana gochara. Janmashwarya shuta shibir edamada mada praman. Na eva harati abhidhatumai tam akinchana gocharam. That ones who are too puffed up by wealth, like even Jesus said that it's easier for a camel to pass through an eye of a needle, right? Than a rich man to go to heaven, right?
Yes.
So one who's too drunk and intoxicated by his or her wealth, possessions, and like like knowledge and things and so on, can never approach with a feeling heart. So then when Krishna takes all these things away, then for such a person, the only possession they have is Krishna. Krishna is my only possession, that they can approach really feelingly to Krishna. So one last point I'll make, and I'll end with this point, which is we hear this pastime of Draupadi, who's being disrobed by, there's a whole story about how some not so good people are trying to molest a really pious lady, Draupadi, if you don't know the background of Draupadi, and she's being disrobed. And initially, one hand she's trying to resist, and other hand she's raised her hand up, and she's calling out to Krishna, like, Govinda, please help me. And she's resisting with one hand, and the other hand she's trying to sort of. By the way, there was a play done in Brooklyn Temple many years ago. And they had a stage set up, and there was a curtain behind the stage. There's like Pandavas and Kauravas, and Draupadi's getting disrobed. And I was sitting in the audience, and I was trying to think, okay, what's going to happen? The play is getting high gear, and then both the characters are fighting, feet stomping, and they're trying to sort of disrobe Draupadi. And I'm trying to say, okay, how are they going to pull this off, the scene? Because in the actual Mahabharata, sari, Krishna's coming and he's bestowing sari. So then as the scene is unfolding in the drama in Brooklyn Temple, and it's getting really high gear and everybody's really waiting in anticipation, and Dushasana is trying to disrobe Draupadi. And then at that point, what happens, and we've seen the Brooklyn Temple balcony, Krishna appears in the balcony, says, at the time of crisis, I come and deliver. And then a sari comes flying from the balcony from behind, and it comes behind the screen and attaches to Draupadi. And the whole audience, like the jaws drop down, everybody like, Haribol, Haribol, and applauding and clapping. And I was like blown away. A whole sari comes flying in the Brooklyn Temple, and they somehow pulled it off with a pulley and a rope. So sari comes flying behind the curtain and attaches to Draupadi. Anyway, so when Draupadi, with one hand, she's holding her sari and she's crying out to Krishna, and nothing happens. And then everybody's wondering, Pandavas. And finally, what she does, she lets go of both her hands, and she lifts both her hands in the air, and she says, Krishna, save me and help me. And when she does that, and that's when Krishna bestows his protection. So sometimes, just like Draupadi's holding on with one hand to her sari, we can hold with one hand to our intelligence, and the other hand we're trying to call out to Krishna, and then one hand we're thinking, okay, my intelligence, my this and my that. So like this, then until we have faith in other things, then Krishna doesn't fully show up. Just like you say, Sarva Dharman Parityaja, that abandon these false shelter and then take shelter in me. And then that's when you'll see that how I can Sarva Dharman Parityaja. Anyway, that I'll deliver you from all kinds of problems. So Vritrasura also gives this example how to feelingly call out. He gives 3 examples. Like one is just like a baby bird who hasn't developed wings is always waiting for their mother to come and feed. Those birds that are in a nest, they can't fly yet and go look for their own food. So they're just waiting, and then the mother bird comes and then puts food in the beaks of the baby bird, and then the baby bird is like sort of extending up, like out of eagerness, and the mother bird comes and feeds. He gives that's one example, and just like calves are sort of eagerly waiting to be milked. Or lover is like waiting for her beloved to come. May I always long, Vritrasura saying, may I always long for your mercy. So that's the nice mood to have towards Krishna, like complete dependence and not depending on our own faith. So with this, maybe you can see if we have some reflections, comments, anything either from our live studio or online audience. Yes.
It's interesting, this concept, you were talking about after you told the story of Draupadi and how she had to fully surrender to Krishna, and then Krishna provided her the sari. And you're saying that we can't depend upon our intelligence. It's interesting because we also do have to use our intelligence in Krishna's service. Like, it's not like, oh, let me just, not think and not use my intelligence in Krishna's service, and like I can just not think at all, and Krishna will just take care of everything for me. Like, so how do we find this balance between using our intelligence in Krishna's service and acting like everything depends on us, but praying like everything depends on Krishna? Like, we have to have that understanding we're not the doer, and ultimately Krishna, even when we use our intelligence, Krishna is giving us that intelligence.
Yes.
He can give us that intelligence. He can take that intelligence away at any moment. He is that intelligence. So even when we're using our intelligence with the meditation of, thank you, Krishna, for giving me this intelligence. Please use me as an instrument of your will. Please make my intelligence the way that you want it. And just one more point on that is often, everyone always talks about like my intuition, right? People are always talking about their intuition. And intuition is, my Shiksha Guru has told me that intuition is also Paramatma, Krishna in our heart guiding us. Yeah, but also our intuition can also be wrong sometimes because our senses are faulty. So we have to understand, we have to check our intuition with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra, because otherwise our intuition could, even though intuition is given by Paramatma, however, if our mind is attached to something, if our senses are attached to something, if our false ego is attached to something, our intuition can actually be an extension of our false ego taking us away from Krishna. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah. Thank you. Beautiful.
Yeah.
It was more like a comment than a question, right? I think the first beautiful. The first point, I think you sort of clarified nicely that even though we have intelligence, it's not our creation, it's something that's provided by Krishna. And also sometimes we can have material intelligence and there's spiritual intelligence. Material intelligence are those visions and ideas and concepts we carry from our material conditioning. And spiritual intelligence is like Shastra Chakshu. We learn to see through the eyes of scriptures. That's how we can sharpen our knowledge and intelligence, by reading Shastra. And the Shastra will, like you said, will teach us how to align our thinking with Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Beautiful. And then also we need that aspect of humility, because you can read Shastra, like that William Blake comment that I read Bible, you and I read Bible, you read day and I read night, something like that. So you can read Shastra, but then people still have this abhiman, that ahankar, that okay, I'm so this and I'm so that. So if humility is missing, then even if you try to develop the spiritual intelligence, Maya will turn that against us. Did you have a?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, we were once discussing our community group, and we said, like you said, perspective, that sometimes it's easier in this world for people, even devotees. They can give up material possessions, the wealth, the power, the job, even sex. But giving up your ego, you're so attached to false ego that even the greatest devotees manage to somehow get the false ego with their spiritual practice.
Beautiful, brilliant. Thank you so much. You said it's easier to give up position, but perspective is really hard. And just see, like, we have so many debates going on with this whole pandemic and vaccine. Just see how hard it is for you to say the other person is right. Can you say that? It's all those debates that we've been engaged in about vaccines and this and that, and someone is opposing you, and it's just so hard for us to accept. Okay, maybe there could be another perspective also. So thank you so much for that point. Any other comments, points, questions?
Lots of self-realization. My comments are everything that you said. I've been great. Yeah, I'm good. No
Thank you.
questions right now.
Thank you for joining us.
Can you repeat the question? We couldn't hear that.
So he just said he's happy to be here. There was no question. He said he's just happy.
The perfect contribution to the class. He's happy. Nice.
Anything from our online audience, like either chat or?
Okay, online audience, this is your chance.
Andrea Prabhu has her hand.
Oh, Andrea.
Hare Krishna, Godruma Prabhu. So nice to see you. It's so nice that the first class that I get to attend is with you, since I've known you for so long, since 26 Second Avenue, and I really appreciate it. Somebody wrote about how we have to act as if everything depends on us and pray as if everything depends on Krishna. And I just wanted to briefly share how I've actually experienced that just this past week with my surgery on last Wednesday. I was scheduled for surgery, and there was just so much that I could do, right? Like, I knew that I could prepare for the surgery. I did visualizations. I knew I was going to be doing japa beforehand. My mom was playing kirtans in the room before the surgery, and we did all that preparation that we could. We went to see the deities the night before, we did all those things. But when it came to that actual moment, it was all, I just let it go. And I was just like, well, it's in Krishna's hands. And when the anesthesiologist was going over, like all the things that could happen, and I was able to honestly say to her, well, I didn't say Krishna because she wouldn't have understood, but I said, if God wants to call me back now, then I'm okay with it. And I actually said it and believed it. It like, there was no fear. And also another thing that I wanted to share that really helped is gratitude is a space in which pride and fear can't grow. And I've heard the first part from Rukmini Prabhu, that if we're grateful, not just to Krishna, but to everybody that we come in contact with. And I tried to do that day. Every person that I met, I thanked them by name. And I was just so grateful for whatever service they were doing. Like, I honestly didn't have any fear that day. I was just like, it's in Krishna's hands. So I don't want to talk too long, but I just really want to share that because it actually made it a really profound experience. And I feel so much more connected to Krishna and to the devotees through a surgery. So thank you so much, Haribo.
Wow, so gratitude is a space where pride and fear can grow. Beautiful. It's such a beautiful point. Yes, Adi Prabhu.
A little closer, I can't see. It's funny, I had a similar experience. The first time I came to the temple, 1973 in the Henry Street Temple, I walked in and there was a gift shop, and there were these two teenage temple residents there. And there was that picture of the Brahma Mohan all the different features of Vishnu. And I said, what's that? And then they started to try to explain to me. I had, you were saying sometimes in order to, in this part of the world at this time, a prevalent perspective that's difficult to give up is that God is either he doesn't exist, or he's just an energy, or he's some vague, thing, the universe, and they were trying to explain. I had to like, wait a minute. You mean God is a person? He has a personality? I said, yeah, he has lotus feet. I said, God has feet? And they said, and Balaram is his brother. God has a brother? I mean, just breaking it down just to the point of understanding that the Lord is a person and can speak and does playful things as if he's a human being. That was like a big break of my I had to give up a incomplete perspective of the Supreme Lord, just to start to hear that, and then just to walk in the first day and hear this pastime of like Krishna, the Supreme Lord, expanding himself as a replica of all his friends and the cows, and bewildering a demigod by his superior mystic potency. How do you get from like not even knowing that God's a person to this pastime, right? So you brought up a very good point that, we have to be humble and say, okay, let me at least hear what this other perspective is and try to take it in, even if I'm not ready to completely accept it wholeheartedly and subscribe to it and see the world like that. Wow.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, Chris. Yeah, he wants to say something. Come close. There's 25 people online.
So I opened a book, and I think the biggest realization I had this morning is the fact that I have like wealthy, not my family, but part of my family has money. And the biggest realization is that I've seen them very unhappy. And the sentence that, like, right, the first paragraph in the book said, wealth is love. If you don't have that, like, there's a lot missing in life,
So this book is love, right?
Yeah. So that's my
Fantastic.
Thank you. The biggest wealth is love. Any other from our online audience?
Bhima Prabhu hand is raised.
Oh, Bhima Prabhu, our discussion is never complete, but without Bhima Prabhu's beautiful realizations. Where are you, Bhima Prabhu?
Haribol Prabhu, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I'm always in an area that either cutting in or cutting out. But I would just like to first of all say that wonderful class. I love the fact that you brought up perspective, renunciation of perspective, or our so-called point of view. I have just something on an aside. Sometimes I scroll through, what's it called? Instagram. And I come upon the Harinam, New York. And I see you there a lot out there with Roy Ram and stuff. And I'm always overjoyed to see the devotees that I know out there on the Harinam Sankirtan. So, and you're always like a sun rising in the background there. So I see that. But what I would like to say is that in response to Andrea's experience, that the perspective of complete and utter surrender to whatever Krishna wants in a time such as that. So you have Draupadi throwing up both hands, and Andrea going through a very serious operation, throwing up her idea of what it is to cling to what we want and just sort of put a faith, a falling into Krishna's arms and saying, whatever you want, Krishna. I just think that that is the ultimate surrender of perspective, not only whether Krishna is playing with us, which he always is. Ananda Bihari the other day says, well, we hear these stories, these fantastic, wonderful stories of Krishna and his pastimes, but then we ask ourselves, how does that relate to our everyday? And we have to understand that Krishna's pastimes relate to us every day, and that those pastimes are meant for us to surrender joyfully and completely and utterly. So thank you very much for the class. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Godruma Prabhu ki jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Godruma Prabhu, the rising sun.
Shri Radha Damodar ki jai. Gaur Chandra ki jai.
Hare Krishna. Rich, Krishnadaya Prabhu, Sundarananda, Amish Prabhu, Hemangi, Bhima Prabhu is still here. Bruce, Dana, Krishna Radharani, Suzanne, Preeti, Chaturvedi, Sharmila, Amita Kishori Didi, Isabel, Spirit Soul, Gail, Dana Kelly Prabhu. Very good seeing you. I think Bhima Prabhu just initiated Andrea. We're going to call her Andrea Draupadi from now on. She's Draupadi. She's a surrendered soul. She did it. Right?
Draupadi.
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 Yeah. Andrea Draupadi. Yes. Okay. Nice. Done. Check. All right. Have a wonderful Monday. It's Monday, but don't get discouraged. Give it to Krishna. And come back tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.